비트코인이 약간 약세를 보여주고 있는 요즘입니다. 과열되어 있는 코인 시장에 조금씩 조정이 찾아오는 것 같은데요. 제가 올렸던 영상의 전문가들과는 다른 모습을 보여주는 요즘, 과연 올해 안에 어떤 모습을 보여줄 수 있을지 골드만삭스 출신 거시경제 전략가 라울 파리 30년간 월스트리트에서 거시경제 투자자로 활약해온 조르디와 함께 이야기를 나눴는데요. 빠르게 그 내용 보시죠.
Given that cohort of, let's say, 25-year-olds to 40-year-olds now, that older Gen Z and core millennial cohort who are in this trap, they're deep in the middle of this trap. Not only is crypto offering them an opportunity, but we're seeing the rise of the speculative economy. And we're seeing it in prediction markets. We're seeing it, the rise of Robinhood. Robinhood's growth is extraordinary, what's going on. As people are realizing that speculation is somewhat warranted because they've no other way around it. But it also leads me into, well, the good thing that speculation is doing is testing all these things in crypto, these new ideas, they get tested like memes, which is like capital formation, instant capital formation. And also humans, if we're not in a job, we'll probably still speculate because it's fun. I don't know, there's a big rise of this speculative economy, I think is a big mega trend that people don't really see. They're too cynical.
All you have to do is go to the Fred database and look at the chart of gambling as personal consumption expenditures of gambling, which is now over $200 billion a year in the US. And it's a perfectly linear incline. And then you go and look at how much you spent on new cars in the US, and that is on a decline. And the numbers right now for new cars, personal consumption expenditures are below $250 billion. And I'm sure after the tariffs, they'll be even lower, which means gambling is just taking over as a major, major part of the economy, which I think everyone knew because they can see it on TV. They realize there's, fan duels everywhere, but I don't think people have gotten to the point of why. And I do think it is a very major thing for younger people because of the boredom. It's a form of education. They view experiences completely different than we did. And at least they have a chance of getting money, where if they spend money on an expensive dinner, it's just lost. And so I do think crypto falls into that. I do think needing real-time information, real-time pricing, doing things when you want, it all fits in with a faster world and settlements of money, everything. So I do think it's a representation that the world is getting faster and that matches AI. But I also think it gets into the boredom and the anger that people are having towards not being able to enjoy their lives the way they would want.
And when you look at the crypto landscape in terms of the adoption now of what we're seeing, all of these corporate treasuries, what does it mean to you?
So I think this year and really the last, I want to say 18 months has been about accepting a gradual acceptance of Bitcoin as something which will be here 5 to 10 years from now. So I think
remember when we first met, you were still struggling to explain to traditional hedge fund people and finance people that this was meaningful, and they thought Geordie was a nutcase. And now suddenly everything's changed, right?
You
are changing. A nutcase, but that's separate.
Yeah, that's completely separate. Bitcoin's being accepted more and more every day. What is not being accepted at this point, and actually this is a good place for us to talk a little bit about it, because I've said this on my YouTube videos. This feels a lot in the altcoin world like the post.com bubble to me. It feels like there's a lot of people that got involved. So think of the internet from 95 to say 2000. A lot of people joined into it. They left banks, they got involved, and they were hoping to make tons of money. And then you had this big fall, and it took a while to come. It took a while for the NASDAQ to get out of the problem. And one of the reasons it took a while to get out, just like it was in Japan with all of the banks owning shares of, everything about this overhang of people that had gone into something. Every time anything goes higher, there seems to be a wall of supply that stops it from the crypto community. Now we've got circle enthusiasm. So we've got people focus a little bit. You got Coinbase back up to the highs. So I'd say the traditional finance world is getting a little bit more excited. Now you've connected, in the last week, you've connected, CoreWeave and Core Scientific. So now we're getting some of the Bitcoin miners back involved. All of a sudden, the traditional finance world is starting to see things. I have said publicly, and I will continue to see it until Ethereum breaks out because of the network effects on stablecoins, which I think is there. Until Ethereum breaks out, just another OG of one of this, and people start getting on board, I don't think we're going to have the kickoff to what I believe will be the end of the dot-com bubble overhang. And I think that's what we have in crypto from the 21-22 period. A lot of overhang. It seems like there's a lot of supply. And once we work through it, I still believe there's going to be a short squeeze in the entire space this year.
조르디와 라울팔은 암호화폐 시장의 투기성을 인정하면서도 이건 미래자산, 형성실험적인 자본 배분의 새로운 양상이라고 바라보고 있었습니다. 그러면서 대규모 공매도 청산은 아직도 유효하다고 바라봤는데요. 알트코인 시장의 상승이 그런 이유로 상승의 제동이 걸린 것이라고 보고 있습니다. 이것이 끝나면 다시 상승장이 도래하고 이렇게 새로운 자산가들이 탄생할 것이라고 봤는데요. 그들의 이야기처럼 조정을 하나의 기회로 보고 들어가게 된다면 우리 모두 부를 이룰 수 있게 될까요? 근데 솔직히 전문가들 얘기 들으면 다 쉬워 보입니다. 그런데 막상 뛰어들면 현실은 다릅니다. 세력, 고래, 냉정한 시장 진짜 정보는 독점됩니다. 저희는 여러분이 5분 먼저 대응할 수 있도록 정보를 무료로 공개하고 있습니다. 하단 링크 클릭하고 함께 기회를 잡아봅시다.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the ETH breaking new highs is probably also Solana breaking new all-time highs because it hasn't broken where it was. And that is a mass wealth generation event. You know, there's a lot of people involved in this. There's a lot of fortunes to be made, and that creates a whole new cycle of reinvestment and opportunity risk-taking and stuff like that. Yeah, I totally agree. And it feels like it's coming when that is. I mean, most of my work suggests that, you know, this year should continue and maybe even the first 2 quarters of next year continues. Here's a question I want to ask you. One of the things that we have done the work on is that, and this won't surprise you, the main driver of alt season, as you call it for the smaller stocks, is actually the business cycle. And the business cycle is the same driver as small caps versus big caps. It's EM versus that. It's junk versus, you know, it's always the same trade, because once the business cycle picks up, people have earnings, they go further out the risk curve, it gets reinvested. Why has the ISM remained so low? I mean, you and I have looked at this ever for our whole careers. This is the longest period below or at 50 in the history of the ISM. What is all this about?
So here's the part that I'll say though. It is the problem that in a world where artificial intelligence is coming, there should never be a time that the ism takes off. It just shouldn't happen, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to change that a little bit because I do think we're getting closer and closer to something which is related to the business cycle of AI. Because at the end of the day, if I equate all cycles to power, meaning you have to be building something, and oil has always been, it's that macro piece that offsets and is out of control of monetary policy and fiscal policy. You need power. That is the thing that needs to fuel it. And AI consumes an enormous amount of power. And we are going to start to see, well, it's ironic I say this to someone in Spain, but we're going to start to see important blackouts. And there's going to be more of them, in the US. And I think they're coming very, very soon because I don't think people have looked at the exponential move. And this fits into the alt season side to me. So I believe we are going to see a change in the business cycle. I just don't think they exist in the push button way that they did, where you do something in the economy and it goes. But I do think it's coming this year because of what's going to be needed for the infrastructure build out on data centers, on power. These are massive numbers, nuclear. This is going to be a change. I just think it's going to be financed by the government.
The middle American, the median person, has had their mortgages up here, their car payments up here, their credit card payments here. They're still like this.
Yep.
Right, the stock market goes up, a bunch of rich people get richer, and sure, their pension plans might be going up, but that doesn't make a difference to their pocketbook. And the moment they start cutting rates, allowing rates to fall, people can refund their mortgages and the money will flow.
Yeah, I think what Trump is saying to everyone is the bet he wants to make is to move rates as close to zero as possible. And whether that's 2%, 1%, it doesn't really matter. I think the rate cuts that we did before were a normalization rate cut. So we overshot and then we moved them to a level where you can make the argument that, okay, now we're normal. The next rate cuts to me will be the actual rate cuts that we were expecting. That'll be the trigger for the business cycle. And it'll come at a time where I really do believe we are underestimating just how much build out is going to have to happen to deal with all this compute, the humanoids that are coming behind it, the full self-driving vehicles, the AI native phones, the battery needs. I mean, I've tried to explain to people in my writings with how much hardware is needed for the embodiment side. And I think you're seeing that in the semiconductors. I think semiconductors are the oil of this generation. Yeah. And they're breaking higher and they're broadening out. It's not just NVIDIA anymore. It's the analog names. And I think that's in preparation. So I would be using, and I have in the past, and I'm sure you have too, if you haven't seen this so far, the SOX relative to the NDX, it's having its best quarter in the last 25 years. And I think that's a kickoff phase because I think for a true business cycle scenario that you're talking about, semiconductors should outperform software, and that's what's necessary. And I think that's what started.
In the end, where I get to in all of this is somewhere down the line, the marginal cost of electricity will go to zero. And therefore you have infinite abundance of intelligence plus humanoids. And so what is money at that point?
Well, now you're getting into the point. If I told you, and I'm not predicting this, although in the back of my mind, I've decided, I don't know if you've ever done this, I've decided not to predict publicly where I think Bitcoin's going to go. But I do think the second half of this year will be a explosive up move. And I say explosive because I believe the most important thing that happened in the first half of the year was what Sundar Pichai said on the Lex Fridman podcast and also at the Google I.O. developer. When he said that from a year ago, we were up 50 times in token usage. Okay. Now, if you ask 100 people on Wall Street, what's a token with inside AI, 99 of them won't know what it is unless you go specifically to the tech world. When I hear tokens, I think AI adoption, I think inference, I think reasoning, I think AI agents are just starting. AI agents to me are the most powerful force for productivity and job losses in terms of the going through, but it is massively powerful for Stripe. They should see exponential growth in stablecoin transactions. And you're seeing this, like the stablecoin adoption is happening at the same time. I just don't think people yet know on the wealthy side know how to translate tokens to stable coins, to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to the power needed to fund it, all of that. But I think that's what we're going to learn. And I think that is an anti-fiat situation. I think it's fine. They'll go up together. But if Bitcoin were to go to say 500,000 by the end of this year, not predicting, I'm just saying if it did, because of a short squeeze, which I think is going to happen at some point from all the people realizing that it is a finite asset and there are people that need to borrow on it because they got in trouble from 21, 22 and they're borrowing future production and blah, blah, blah. I've now gone through this. If we get a spike, well, that'll put it at $10 trillion in terms of Bitcoin. You'll have the entire ecosystem go up. I don't think the fiat system will see that type of growth in terms of this. And once that's moving at that speed, I think everyone from the investor world is going to start looking at how to participate at a time that wallets are easier to open and we're starting to see more and more. So I just have this belief that instead of this being a boom, I view this as a disruptive shift in money that has to happen at a time, not when the fiat system is doing well, but when the crypto thing is doing so well and it's not based on speculation, it's based on the transfer of money.
Yeah, and I've always said it was a parallel financial system that got built and we're now migrating across. And what we're about to do is migrate the cash system onto stablecoins. I mean, it's staggering, but it's coming. And when you've got the government talking about deficit financing and everyone kind of knows that it's debasement, it'll only accelerate the adoption curve because it is the only way out. It's this capitalism eating capitalism. Well, here's the newest form and it's going to happen and nothing will stop it.
That's where I think we are. I think all the turning points right now are that capitalism is eating capitalism. And rather than it be a bearish argument for assets, it's not. But I think the pie of assets, the shift should be happening to a different system. And I think that's a very different argument. And I think it'll bring wealthy people in because then FOMO will set in, greed will fit in, and it'll be more towards the crypto world. And that's why I think Circle's important. I think CoreWeave's IPO is important. I think Core Scientific, you're seeing it in the traditional finance side. And when I hear people say, well, I think Bitcoin's not going up because people are moving into Circle. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but that's not the way it works. I just think the Ethereum side and the power side, the whole energy, all of the transactions, I thought the token side is big.
Interconnectedness of everything. That's what people don't yet see. And what you're talking about is it's all part of the same thing. It's this new digital world that we're moving into that is entirely new, and it has its own system of money, it has its own system of truth, it has its own ledger system, it has its own everything, and it has its own intelligence, and it has its own physicality. I mean, that's what we're moving into. It's a whole new...
라울팔과 조르디의 이야기 어떻게 들으셨나요? 정말 가상화폐는 돈의 정의를 바꾸는 중심이 되어줄 수 있을까요? 하지만 제 채널에 등장하는 전문가들은 대부분 비트코인을 좋게 이야기해야 하는 위치에 있는 사람들입니다. 고객 자금을 굴리고 있거나 회사 자금으로 비트코인을 구매한 사람들이 많기 때문이죠. 시장에는 정답질은 없습니다. 그럼에도 많은 투자자들은 리스크를 감수하고 돈을 벌기 위해서 비트코인 시장에 뛰어드는 것이죠. 하지만 급등락하는 비트코인 시장에서 급등과 급락을 반복하는 차트를 보고도 개인 투자자들이 욕심과 공포를 떨쳐내고 평정심과 내 자산이 우상향을 하는 것은 말처럼 쉽지가 않으실 겁니다. 저 또한 전업투자자 생활을 오래 했지만 항상 좋은 자리를 기다리고 인내해야 수익을 조금씩 낼 수 있었습니다. 그래서 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀에서는 어떻게 하면 일반 개인 투자자들도 투자 시장에서 수익을 낼 수 있을까? 구독자분들께 어떻게 하면 조금이라도 도움을 좀 드릴 수 있을까? 고민을 하다가 구독자분들도 비트코인이 명확하게 상승 추세가 나왔을 때만 투자를 하실 수 있게 한다면 수익이 조금 나지 않을까? 라는 생각을 하게 되었는데요. 제가 전업 투자를 하면서도 개발자로 오래 일을 했기 때문에 저도 써볼 겸 유료 결제를 해서 결국 만들었습니다. 바로 비트코인이 정말 신뢰할 수 있는 상승 추세인 건지 횡보인지 하락인지 알 수 있게 도움을 주는데요. 지금 보고 계시는 건 비트코인 차트인데요. 제가 빨간색 네모 박스로 표시해둔 곳을 보시면 주황색 61선과 파란색 121선이 교차하는 구간에서 추세가 변동되는 걸 보실 수 있습니다. 실제로 지금 비트코인은 최근에 61선과 121선이 데드크로스 하방 교차하면서 조정이 나오고 있는데요. 제가 운영 중인 앤드류 관점 채널에서는 보시다시피 2월 25일부터 제가 줄 곧 비트코인 하락 관점을 제가 말씀드리고 리스크 관리에 대해서 말씀을 드렸고 많은 분들이 도움을 받으셨습니다. 물론 데드크로스가 난다고 해서 무조건 하락하지도 상승하지도 않습니다. 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀에서 개발한 알파빗 지표는 약 8개의 고급 추세 기준과 트레이더들의 노하우를 담아서 차트가 상승할 확률이 높을 때 신호가 나오도록 개발을 하였습니다. 그 결과 저희 전문 트레이딩 팀 또한 판단에 도움받을 정도로 만족할 만한 놀라운 성과를 보였습니다. 시중에 유료로 팔 수 있을 정도로 가치 있는 지표이지만 저희 앤드류 채널 영상을 시청해주시는 구독자분들께는 무료로 제공해드리기로 마음먹었습니다. 저 또한 며칠 밤새 테스트하며 어렵게 만든 지표이지만 구독자분들 성원에 힘입어 저 또한 도움을 받고 있기 때문에 어렵게 공유드리기로 마음먹었습니다. 초보자분들부터 경력이 오래된 트레이더분들까지 굉장히 큰 도움을 받을 수 있는 지표라 도움이 되실 거라고 자부합니다. 신청 방법은 하단 더보기란과 고정 댓글에 나와 있으니 많은 신청 부탁드리고 이번 하락장에서 모두 잘 살아남으셔서 좋은 성적 내시면 좋겠습니다.